First contact and fatal mistakes. The massive command ship of the Karazi Empire hung silently at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull refracting the distant light of Earth's sun into rainbow patterns across its surface. Supreme Commander Vex stood on the observation deck, his tall, gaunt frame reflected in the polished black floor beneath him. His four violet eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display of the blue-green planet rotating slowly before him. Another primitive world, he remarked, his voice carrying the distinctive resonant tone of the Karazi highborn. Look at them, still burning fossil fuels, fighting amongst themselves over land and resources. Pathetic. He gestured with a seven-fingered hand, zooming in on Earth's night side where city lights formed intricate webs across the continents. Science Officer Mira worked diligently at her console, her scaled skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns as she processed the data streaming in from the scout probes. Unlike Vex, Mira was shorter, her frame more compact, adapted for the technical work of the scientific cast. "Commander," Mira said, rising from her station, "I've completed my preliminary analysis of the planet, and I believe we should exercise caution with this species." Vex turned, annoyance flickering across his features. Caution. For dirt dwellers who can barely reach their own moon. The resource survey confirms abundant rare minerals, particularly the crystalline energy matrices we need for the fleet expansion, Mira acknowledged. But these humans, she hesitated, calling up new data on the main display. The hologram shifted to show military formations, nuclear arsenals, and historical footage of human conflicts. "They're unusual, sir. Their technological development doesn't follow the standard progression curve we've observed in other species. They've advanced from primitive flight to rudimentary space travel in less than a century." Mira brought up images of various human weapons systems and military tactics, and their warfare is remarkably adaptive. They've developed thousands of different combat strategies across their history. They don't fight like any species we've encountered before. The ship's tactical officer, Krell, laughed from his station. "Look at those primitive weapons. Their most advanced fighters couldn't even scratch our hull plating." "It's not their current technology that concerns me," Mira insisted, "but their potential and their psychology. They've developed weapons specifically to destroy each other in staggering numbers, yet they've repeatedly stepped back from self-annihilation. They're simultaneously violent and restrained in ways that defy our predictive models." Commander Vex waved his hand dismissively, collapsing the hologram back to a simple view of Earth. "Your concerns are noted, Science Officer, but the conquest proceeds as planned. The High Council expects this system to be secured within one standard rotation. The resource extraction cannot wait." Mira bowed slightly, protocol perfect, but her expression remained troubled. "Yes, Commander. I'll complete the assessment as ordered." As Mira returned to her station, Vex turned to Krell. "Deploy the observer drones. I want detailed scans of their major population centers and military installations." "Already underway, sir," Krell responded, his fingers dancing across his control panel. First wave of drones has entered the outer atmosphere. They're in stealth mode. The humans won't detect them with their primitive sensors. On the massive view screen, tiny crystalline objects detached from the Karazi mothership, accelerating toward Earth. Each drone, shaped like an elongated teardrop, contained advanced scanning technology and limited defensive capabilities. Mira watched the deployment with growing unease. She'd studied over 30 species before their conquest by the Karazi Empire, and none had shown the peculiar combination of traits she'd observed in humans. They seemed simultaneously fractured into competing nations, yet capable of remarkable unity when threatened. Their entertainment broadcasts, which Mira had analyzed extensively, showed an unusual preoccupation with stories about successfully fighting against overwhelming odds. "Commander," Mira said, making one last attempt, "perhaps we should start with diplomatic contact rather than immediate invasion. The data suggests these humans might." "Enough, Science Officer," Vex cut her off sharply. The High Council doesn't waste diplomacy on pre-FTL civilizations. They have resources we need. That's the end of it. Across the command deck, various Karazi officers monitored their stations, preparing for what they all believed would be a routine conquest. The Karazi Empire had expanded across two spiral arms of the galaxy using the same efficient protocol. Identify resource-rich worlds, overwhelm any resistance with superior technology, extract what was needed, and move on. "Drum telemetry coming in, sir," called out Tren, the sensor officer. "Interesting. They've detected unusual energy signatures around their polar regions and several deep underground facilities, significantly more advanced than their public infrastructure would suggest." Vex frowned slightly. "Military installations?" "Possibly," Tren replied. "But the energy patterns don't match known weapon systems. They're unusual." Mira moved to the sensor station, studying the readings with growing alarm. "Sir, these energy signatures, they're similar to early-stage gravitic manipulation. That's well beyond what their public technology suggests they should have." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Vex's face, but it vanished quickly. "Probably detecting their primitive nuclear facilities incorrectly. Continue the deployment." On the command deck's secondary screens, images from the drones showed Earth's cities, oceans, and military bases. Humans went about their lives, unaware they were being observed, unaware their planet had already been marked for conquest. "Sir, we're intercepting an unusual increase in encrypted communications between their military bases," reported the communications officer. "They may have detected our drones despite the stealth systems." "Impossible," Vex said firmly. "Prepare the first wave of dropships. We'll secure their largest command centers simultaneously. Standard shock protocol." Throughout the massive Karazi fleet, warrior-cased soldiers began boarding assault craft, checking their plasma weapons and energy shields. They were broad-shouldered beings with reinforced exoskeletons and bioengineered reflexes, natural-born warriors further enhanced with advanced technology. None felt any concern about facing human defenders. This was routine. The invasion fleet launched, thousands of ships moving into perfect formation as they accelerated toward Earth. Their crystalline hulls refracted the sunlight, creating a beautiful and terrible rainbow effect. "The High Council will be pleased," Commander Vex said confidently. "This acquisition will proceed quickly, just like all the others." As the fleet disappeared into the atmosphere, Mira turned back to her data analysis, searching desperately for something, anything, that might convince her superiors to reconsider. The Karazi Empire had conquered dozens of worlds before, but Mira couldn't shake the feeling that Earth would be different. The first Karazi vessels broke through Earth's atmosphere at dawn, their massive hulls casting mile-long shadows across the awakening cities below. The crystalline ships moved with impossible grace for their size, positioning themselves strategically above Earth's major population centers. In the underground command center of Earth's United Defense Force, General Sarah Chen stood rigid, her weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of monitor screens. Decades of military service had prepared her for many scenarios, but first contact with an alien civilization had always seemed like a theoretical exercise, until today. "All systems are tracking multiple objects entering low Earth orbit," reported Colonel Ramirez, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "We count 42 major vessels and hundreds of smaller craft. Their energy signatures are off the charts." Chen nodded, her short gray hair hardly moving as she studied the tactical display. "What about civilian evacuations?" "Proceeding according to Protocol Omega," answered Major Petal from her station. "Underground shelters are at 65% capacity and filling." The command center buzzed with controlled urgency as military personnel monitored the alien ship's movements. Everyone in the room knew they were witnessing history, humanity's first confirmed contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. "General," Ramirez said, looking up from his station, "the Security Council is ready. They're requesting your presence in the communication suite." Chen straightened her uniform jacket. "Keep monitoring those ships. Any hostile movement, any at all. I want to know immediately. The communication suite was a small, secure room adjacent to the main command center. Inside, wall-mounted screens showed the faces of world leaders and military commanders from across the globe, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension. The vessels have maintained position for 19 minutes without aggressive action, Chen reported to the gathered officials. All indications suggest this is a show of force rather than an immediate attack. The President of the United Defense Alliance spoke, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Then we proceed as agreed. We offer peace first, always first. There was a murmur of agreement from the assembled leaders. Despite decades of international tensions and conflicts, the discovery of the approaching alien fleet 3 months ago had accomplished what countless peace summits could not: a united human response. Very well, Chen said. I'll give the order. Back in the command center, she nodded to the communications team. Send the message. All frequencies, all languages, all channels. A young communications officer pressed a series of commands into his console. Transmitting now, General. Across the planet, from military bases to civilian broadcast stations, from satellite uplinks to undersea communication cables, the same message flowed outward toward the hovering alien fleet. We seek peace and offer friendship. Choose your next actions carefully. In orbit, aboard the Karazi command vessel, Science Officer Mira monitored the incoming transmission with increasing interest. Commander, the humans are broadcasting a message on all frequencies. They're using over 200 different language forms, but the content appears identical in each. Commander Vex barely glanced up from his tactical display. What does it say? They're offering peace and friendship, Mira replied. But there's also what appears to be a warning at the end. Vex laughed, the sound echoing across the command deck. A warning? From them to us. He gestured to the view screen showing Earth below. Look at them, Mira, fragmented into nation-states, barely able to escape their own gravity well, still killing each other over resources and imaginary boundaries. Mira frowned as she continued analyzing the data streaming in from Earth's surface. Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from several locations. They don't match anything in our databases. Primitive nuclear weapons, most likely. Vex dismissed. Prepare the demonstration strike. The Council wants this acquisition completed quickly. Mira's four-fingered hands hesitated over her console. Commander, protocol suggests we should at least respond to their communication before. Your concerns are noted, Science Officer. Vex interrupted coldly, again. The tactical plan has been approved by the High Council. We demonstrate our power, they surrender, we begin resource extraction. This has worked on 47 worlds before. Across the command ship, Karazi officers monitored their stations with practiced efficiency. None questioned the commander's orders. The hierarchy was absolute in Karazi society. The weapons officer, Jarvik, activated the main targeting array, its humming filling the bridge. Target acquisition complete, Jarvik announced. Demonstration strikes ready for New York, Beijing, and Moscow. As ordered. Vex nodded in satisfaction. Commence firing. On Earth, in the underground command center, alarms suddenly blazed to life. Major Patel's eyes widened in horror as she read the incoming data. General, massive energy buildup detected from the alien vessels. They're charging weapon systems. General Chen's expression remained calm, though her eyes hardened to flint. So they've made their choice. She reached for the command console, pressing her palm against the biometric scanner. Initiate defensive protocol echo. Authorization. Chen Alpha 7 Zulu. Colonel Ramirez looked up in surprise. Echo, General. Are you certain? They've given us no choice, Chen replied, her voice steady. Send the final transmission. Above, the Karazi vessel's weapons released concentrated beams of iridescent energy that cut through the atmosphere like divine spears. When they reached their targets, the destruction was beyond comprehension. Entire city centers vaporized in blinding flashes. The shock waves that followed leveled buildings for miles in every direction. In seconds, 3 of Earth's great cities became smoking craters. Millions of lives extinguished between one heartbeat and the next. On the Karazi command ship, the crew watched the destruction with clinical detachment. For them, this was simply another conquest, another resource acquisition. Excellent targeting, Vex said, satisfaction evident in his voice. The demonstration is complete. Monitor their communications. Their surrender should be forthcoming. Science Officer Mira stared at the sensor readings in horror. The loss of life was staggering, even by the Karazi's callous standards. Sir, detecting a new transmission from the humans. Put it through, Vex ordered, expecting to hear pleas for mercy. Instead, a single sentence echoed through the command deck. You were warned. What follows is your doing. Then something unexpected happened. The thousands of electronic signatures that the Karazi had been tracking, human communications, power grids, defense systems, began winking out. Not destroyed, but deliberately shutting down. City lights across the planet's night side dimmed and disappeared. Military bases went dark. Satellite transmissions ceased. What's happening? Vex demanded, genuine confusion in his voice for the first time. They're going dark, sir, Mira replied, bewildered as she checked and rechecked her readings. Systematically shutting down their electronic emissions. I'm not detecting any launch of missiles or conventional counterattack. Across the command deck, there was a moment of uncertain silence. This was not how conquered species typically responded. They fought back with whatever weapons they had, or they surrendered immediately. They've realized the futility of resistance, Vex finally declared, though with less certainty than before. Their primitive military minds understand they cannot match our technology. They've surrendered. A celebratory murmur passed through the bridge crew. Another conquest completed efficiently. Another feather in the Karazi Empire's impressive cap. Begin landing the occupation forces, Vex ordered. Secure the resource-rich regions first, then expand outward. Standard procedure. But as the cheers echoed around him, Science Officer Mira continued staring at her sensor readings with growing unease. Something about this didn't feel right. The humans' behavior didn't match any surrender pattern in the historical database. It was almost as if they were preparing for something. She pushed the thought aside. Commander Vex was right. The Karazi Empire had conquered dozens of worlds before. Earth would be no different. But deep in the underground bunkers beneath Earth's surface, General Chen and the United Defense Force were indeed preparing, not for surrender, but for a response that would teach the Karazi Empire a lesson they would never forget. The hunt begins. The Karazi occupation of Earth proceeded according to their well-established protocol. Landing ships descended like crystalline locusts, disgorging troops and machinery across every continent. They established forward bases in strategic locations, the Siberian plains, the Australian outback, the Amazon basin, places where they could process the planet's resources with minimal interference. For 3 weeks, Commander Vex received nothing but positive reports. Human military forces had seemingly vanished. Occasional civilian resistance was swiftly crushed. Resource extraction was ahead of schedule. The High Council will be pleased, Vex said, reviewing the latest production figures in his temporary headquarters, a towering structure of alien architecture now dominating what had been downtown Sydney. This planet will yield triple the rare minerals we projected. Science Officer Mira nodded dutifully, but something nagged at her. The humans had given up too easily. Even species with far less military capability had fought longer, harder. Sir, Mira ventured carefully, don't you find it strange that we've encountered almost no organized military resistance? According to our intelligence, Earth maintains standing armies numbering in the millions. Vex dismissed the concern with a wave of his 7-fingered hand. They recognized the futility of resistance. Even primitives can understand when they're outmatched. The first sign that something was wrong came that night. The Karazi supply ship Viridian 7 vanished while transporting processed minerals from Africa to the command center in Australia. One moment it was transmitting routine position updates, the next, complete silence. "Probably equipment failure," muttered the communications officer, logging the incident. But the next day, 3 more ships disappeared. Then an entire outpost in northern Canada went dark. 40 Karazi soldiers and technicians gone without even an emergency signal. By the end of the week, over 30 installations had gone silent. The few survivors who managed to escape told disturbing tales. They came out of nowhere, reported a badly injured Karazi warrior, his exoskeleton cracked and leaking fluid as medical technicians worked to stabilize him. Humans wearing some kind of adaptive camouflage. Our sensors didn't detect them until they were inside the perimeter. And their weapons, they cut through our shields like they weren't even there. Commander Vex paced the length of his command center, rage emanating from him in almost palpable waves. Impossible. Their technological level is nowhere near capable of penetrating our defensive systems. Another outpost went dark as he spoke, the signal cutting off mid-transmission. "What's happening out there?" Vex demanded, slamming his fist on the holographic display table. "How are they doing this?" No one had answers until the Karazi research vessel Talon intercepted a human military transmission while orbiting Earth. The ship's science officer immediately recognized its significance and rushed the findings to Mira. "You need to see this," she said, her voice tight with urgency as she transferred the data to Mira's terminal. "We've been decoding their military frequencies, and we found this archived message from several of their years ago." Mira studied the information, her expression growing increasingly troubled. The transmission contained detailed technical specifications of Karazi shield harmonics, weapon frequencies, and communication protocols. "This is impossible," Mira whispered. "This is data from our own systems. Current data. How could they possibly have this?" The science officer pointed to another section of the report. "That's the truly disturbing part. This transmission is dated 3 Earth years ago, long before our fleet even entered this system." Mira's mind raced. "Are you suggesting they knew we were coming before we even arrived?" "There's more," the science officer continued. "We've detected unusual energy signatures underneath several of their major mountain ranges. Massive power outputs, consistent with advanced manufacturing facilities." Mira's 4 eyes widened as the implications became clear. They were preparing for us, all this time. On the other side of the planet, in a hidden facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Chen stood before a wall of monitors displaying the locations of Karazi bases and troop movements. Around her, officers and engineers worked at various stations, coordinating the global resistance effort. "Strike Team Alpha reports complete neutralization of the processing center in Kazakhstan," reported Major Patel. "All alien personnel eliminated, equipment secured for analysis." Chen nodded, satisfaction evident in her tired but determined features. "And the prisoners?" "2 captured alive, as ordered. They're being transported to Facility Omega for interrogation." Colonel Ramirez approached, carrying a tablet with the latest intelligence updates. "General, the enemy is starting to adapt to our phase shift weapons. They're modifying their shields." "As expected," Chen replied. "Implement countermeasure protocol beta. Switch all field teams to the resonance disruptors." Ramirez hesitated. "We only have 500 units ready for deployment." "It's enough for now. The production facilities in China and Brazil will have another 1,000 ready by tomorrow." Chen turned to the central monitor, which showed a 3D representation of Earth with Karazi positions highlighted in red. "What about the command ship?" "Still in high orbit, heavily guarded. We can't reach it with our current capabilities." Chen smiled thinly. "We don't need to reach it yet. Let them watch as we dismantle their ground forces piece by piece. Fear is a powerful weapon." In his Sydney headquarters, Commander Vex called an emergency meeting of his surviving senior officers. The situation had deteriorated rapidly. In the past 48 hours alone, 17 more outposts had gone silent. Supply lines were being severed systematically. The resource extraction operation was grinding to a halt. "How is this happening?" Vex demanded, addressing the room filled with increasingly nervous Karazi officers. "How are these primitives defeating our advanced technology?" Science Officer Mira stepped forward, her posture rigid. "I believe I have part of the answer, Commander. The humans have been studying us, not just since our arrival, but for years before." She activated the holographic display, showing intercepted human transmissions and energy readings. "These underground facilities we detected, they're manufacturing centers. The humans have been reverse engineering our technology, or at least creating countermeasures against it." "That's absurd," Krell, the tactical officer, objected. "How could they possibly know our technologies before encountering us?" Mira hesitated, then presented her most disturbing theory. "There's only one explanation that fits the data. They've encountered our kind before, or something similar enough to give them a technological framework." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Another Karazi expedition?" Someone finally asked. "Impossible. We would have records." "Not necessarily our people," Mira clarified, "but perhaps another spacefaring race with similar technological principles, one that perhaps warned them about others like them." Commander Vex slammed his fist on the table. "Enough speculation. I want solutions, not theories. How do we counter their attacks?" Before anyone could respond, the building shook violently. Warning klaxons blared throughout the structure. "We're under attack," Krell shouted, checking his tactical display. "Multiple breaches on the lower levels." Vex activated the security feeds. On the screens, chaos unfolded as human strike teams in advanced powered armor cut through Karazi defenders with devastating efficiency. Their weapons, sleek, compact devices, emitted pulses that caused Karazi shields to collapse instantly. "Evacuate," Vex ordered. "All personnel to the emergency shuttles. Now." As they rushed toward the landing pad, explosions rocked the building. The humans had anticipated their escape route. 3 of the 5 shuttles exploded before anyone could board them. "This way," Mira shouted, leading a group of survivors toward an alternate exit. They emerged onto a secondary platform where a single transport remained intact. As they ran toward it, human soldiers appeared, their armor seeming to materialize from the very air. The Karazi guards raised their weapons, but the humans fired first. Energy pulses struck the Karazi, bypassing their shields completely. One by one, they fell. Mira watched in horror as Commander Vex was hit, his massive frame collapsing to the ground. She managed to reach the transport along with a handful of others, the ship lifting off as human weapons fire peppered its hull. As the transport ascended toward the safety of the command ship in orbit, Mira looked down at the burning headquarters below, now firmly in human hands. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out as human forces systematically dismantled the Karazi occupation. The transport docked with the command ship, and Mira was immediately escorted to the bridge. With Commander Vex presumed dead, she was now the highest-ranking survivor. "The situation is untenable," she reported to the assembled officers. "The humans have developed weapons specifically designed to counter our technology. They're not just resisting, they're hunting us. We still have orbital superiority," argued the ship's captain. "We can bombard their positions from space." "To what end?" Mira countered. "Our ground forces are scattered and being eliminated rapidly. We've lost over 60% of our extraction equipment. Even if we could somehow regain control, the cost would far exceed the value of the resources we came for." "The High Council will never accept a retreat," the captain insisted. Mira's expression hardened. "The High Council isn't here. We are, and we're facing extinction if we remain." Before the debate could continue, the ship's sensors blared a warning. Multiple human spacecraft were launching from previously undetected facilities around the planet. "Primitive chemical rockets," the sensor officer reported dismissively. "No threat to us." But as they watched, the human vessels accelerated at rates that should have been impossible for such technology. Their energy signatures pulsed in patterns that caused interference with Karazi systems. "Those aren't primitive rockets," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've adapted our own propulsion technology." The first human vessels reached orbit and immediately engaged the smaller Karazi ships. Their weapons, energy pulses similar to those used by the ground forces, cut through Karazi shields with terrifying efficiency. "All ships, defensive formation," the captain ordered. "Prepare tow." His words were cut off as the first human attack struck the command ship. Systems failed across the bridge. Emergency lighting activated as main power fluctuated. "They're not trying to destroy us," Mira realized, watching the tactical display. "They're hurting us, forcing us away from the planet." A transmission cut through the chaos, appearing on all functioning screens. General Chen's face filled the display, her expression calm but implacable. "This is General Sarah Chen of Earth's United Defense Force. Your invasion has failed. Your forces on our planet have been neutralized. You have one opportunity to leave our system with your lives. Any ship remaining in Earth orbit in 30 minutes will be destroyed." The transmission ended, leaving stunned silence on the bridge. "They can't possibly have the capability to destroy this command ship," the captain finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Are you willing to risk the lives of everyone aboard to test that theory?" Mira asked quietly. "They've countered every aspect of our technology so far. Why would our hull integrity be any different?" In the end, the decision was made for them. As more Karazi ships fell to the human attack, the captain ordered a full retreat. The surviving vessels of the once mighty invasion fleet limped away from Earth, accelerating toward the jump point that would take them back to Karazi space. As the blue-green planet receded behind them, Mira stood at the observation window, her mind still struggling to comprehend how completely their conquest had failed. "How?" the captain asked, joining her. "How did they defeat us so thoroughly?" Mira's reflection stared back at her from the window, overlaid against the stars. "We ignored their warning," she said simply. "They told us to choose our actions carefully. We chose wrong." 3 months later, Mira stood before the High Council, the final survivor to deliver her testimony about the Earth disaster. The council chamber was vast, its crystalline walls reflecting the light from the central pit of energy that had powered the Karazi homeworld. "So you believe these humans had encountered other spacefaring races before?" asked the council elder, his ancient face creased with concern. "It's the only explanation that fits the evidence," Mira replied. "Someone warned them. Someone gave them a technological framework that allowed them to prepare defenses specifically against our weapons and shields." "And now?" another council member asked. "Now they have our ships, our weapons, our technology. They're studying them, improving them, adapting them. And they're watching for us." Mira's voice grew firm. "We must never return to Earth. More than that, we must spread the word to all other spacefaring races. Earth is to be avoided at all costs." "You suggest we show fear?" scoffed a military council member. "The Karazi Empire does not cower before primitives." "The Karazi Empire," Mira said coldly, "lost over 12,000 soldiers and crew in less than a month to these primitives. They weren't just defending their world. They were hunting us. Systematically, relentlessly." The council chamber fell silent as her words sank in. "There is one more thing," Mira continued. "Before we jumped to hyperspace, we detected unusual energy signatures. The humans weren't just repelling us. They were studying our FTL technology as we fled. The implications hung heavy in the air. A species that could adapt so quickly, that could reverse engineer advanced technology with such efficiency, would not remain confined to their home system for long. They will come looking for us," Mira concluded. "Not immediately, perhaps not for years, but eventually. They will want to ensure we never threaten them again. And when they do," she didn't need to finish the thought. The message was clear. The hunters had become the hunted. Across the galaxy, the story of Earth spread among spacefaring civilizations. A primitive world that had defeated one of the most powerful empires in known space. A species that didn't just fight invaders, they hunted them to extinction. A warning took shape, passed from one world to another. Beware the humans of Earth. They offered peace. They warned what would follow if peace was rejected. They do not forgive those who bring war to their door. And in the vast darkness between stars, humanity prepared, expanding outward at an astonishing pace, their ships bearing the emblem of Earth's United Defense Force and a simple message in every known galactic language. We seek peace and offer friendship. Choose your next actions carefully. This time, the galaxy listened.